So we're ready. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's PSU Transportation Seminar. So my name is Leming Wang. I'm one of the instructors for those of you that take this course for credit. And Dr. Jason Anderson is the instructor on record. For those of you in the CE section, I'm the one that is responsible for in the USB section. And since we are the first class of the term, we have a bit of logistics to handle, maybe a couple of minutes. The syllabus is on Canvas, so check it out if you are a registered student for the class. And there are basically three components if you want to have a good grade. First is attendance, and second one is ask questions. Third is a reflection piece. So for those attending in person, remember to sign in the sign-in sheets. We'll pass those around as well. And then if you attend online, you're allowed to attend one session online. Your attendance, you do need to register beforehand, and then your attendance will be automatically recorded. You're encouraged to ask questions. When you're in a room, ask to the speaker, you will get a good response. Otherwise, you can also submit your question to Canvas. Okay, your reflection your reflection is due every Thursday, midnight Thursday after the seminar. Again, read a bit more details there. Again, submit to Canvas. Okay, and then again, ask us. Either of us, any questions you may have about the course. Okay, and now back to the regular program. So I will be introducing and moderating today's seminar. It
doesn't work.
Okay, I see. Okay, so our Friday Transportation Seminar has been a tradition since the year 2000. The seminars are held live on Portland State University's urban campus, located on the ancestral homelands of the Monoma, Kathlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, and Walala bands of Chinook, the Tualatin, Kalapuya, and many other indigenous nations of the Columbia River. It is important to acknowledge that we are here because of the sacrifice forced on the indigenous ancestors of this place, remember these communities, and to honor their legacy, lives, and destinies. Today, we are very pleased to have Gena, Gastaldi, and Gwen Sullivan, and Ryan Sullivan to present Walk Portland, a downtown pedestrian wayfinding strategy and pilot. Gena is the pedestrian ramp coordinator at the Portland Bureau of Transportation, over there, or PBOT. As a member of the Complete Streets team, she focuses on incorporating multimodal design and policy into all aspects of transportation planning, with a particular focus on the pedestrian experience. She's the project manager for Walk Portland. Ryan and Gwen Sullivan are sparks+sullivan, a design consultancy based in Portland, Oregon. They design innovative, human-centered brands and strategies to connect people with place and products. They are the consultant on Walk Portland. Here are some information about our upcoming seminar. You can also find those on our website. As an overview of today's seminar, you can expect the speakers to present for about 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A. We'll receive questions through the Q&A feature on your Zoom control panel, and we'll ask them at the end of the seminar. If we run out of time for all your questions, we will give our speakers the opportunity to email written response for any question left unanswered. We have enabled closed captions, but you must click on the CC feature to view them. We will recording today's seminar It will be available on website later today, along with the presentation slices. If you're tracking professional development credits, development hours, this seminar is eligible for 1 hour of continuing education credit. For those of you in the room, we'll pass around the sign-in sheets so that you can get credit for attending today. And with that, I will hand it over to Gena, Gwen, and Ryan.
Thank you. All right. Let's get this party started. Are we standing in the good spot for?
Yes.
All right. Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. We're here to talk about Walk Portland, which is a pedestrian wayfinding system and pilot that is up and live right now here in Portland. So the agenda for the presentation, we'll do a quick overview of the Walk Portland work, including the research, our insights and values, the exhibit that we had up last summer, and the pilot project that's currently live right now. This project is a partnership between Travel Portland and the Portland Bureau of Transportation, which is where I work. And Travel Portland is our local tourism agency here, kind of promoting Portland. And the core team is myself as the project manager from PBOT. I have a colleague, Sean Doyle, who couldn't be here today, also at PBOT, who's the assistant project manager. And I have Gwen Sullivan and Ryan Sullivan from Sparks+Sullivan, which is a local experiential design firm based here in Portland. And then our partners, Michael and Jen from Travel Portland.
I have to just say, this is a dream team. And it's not often you say that when it's like the city, it's a complex group of stakeholders, but this has been such an awesome team to work with as a consultant to be able to share this with you. Thanks for the intro. We've got 45 minutes. We are really excited about this content, so we'll try to keep it to 45 minutes because we want to have a discussion. But it's really fun to be able to be here with Gena and share it together because this whole project has been such a tight partnership. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for that. All right, so the motto for the project and kind of the North Star that we all keep going back to as we make decisions and kind of think about this project is that the best way to experience Portland is to walk it. And by walking, we mean folks who are pedestrians, folks using mobility devices, really best way we think to experience Portland is to walk it. The goal of this project is really to create and implement a cohesive, user-friendly wayfinding system that helps pedestrians navigate the pedestrian experience and really promotes a sense of place here in Portland. And we talk a lot about our audience, kind of who is this project for? Who is a downtown pedestrian wayfinding system for? And when we think about our audience, we think about any visitor to downtown Portland. That's who this project is geared towards. So that could be an international visitor, that could be someone here for a weekend attending a conference, or we kind of joke that could be someone like my husband who lives on the east side and never comes into downtown Portland. So he is kind of a visitor to downtown. You know, he might be someone who's just coming from the east side to go to Powell's Books and go back to the east side. It could be someone coming from the suburbs or Vancouver, or it could be someone coming from an international destination. But really anyone from that kind of tourist to local who would kind of express themselves as a visitor into downtown.
Okay, I get to share a little bit about the research that we did that informed this work. So before we started doing any design, we needed to talk to people in Portland. We wanted to be able to, one, understand what are the challenges and opportunities that a wayfinding system could help to address. We talked with our stakeholders, people who we were literally going to say, we need you to actually help implement this. We wanted to learn from past pedestrian wayfinding in Portland, which maybe you're not familiar with because it died. And so we wanted to learn from those past mistakes, but also make sure that we're mining some of the current needs and issues that some of these stakeholders had, concerns as well. We've also have a lot of partner interest. If you're putting something out into the public realm, local hotels in downtown want to be a part of it. PSU planning department wants to be a part of it, which is fabulous. We want all of these groups to be a part of it too. So we were actively reaching out and getting people reaching out to us. So for us to respond, to make sure that they were integrated in this early phase of work. Then we went out onto the streets. We were on the sidewalks. We went into the heaviest pedestrian intersection in the city, which is over by Powell's Books on Burnside. We set up a table, great spot to get people who are tourists, great spot to get people who work downtown, who live downtown, and could share with us their experience of the city. And also, we literally gave them a blank piece of paper and a Sharpie and said, draw a map of Portland for us. And let's see what they draw. We got one smiley face. Most we got like, there's a river and there's some hills. So it's interesting just to understand what is their mental map of the city. Next. And then we put ourselves in the position of tourists as well. So we did different tours. We wanted to see how are people introducing the city to those who are coming in. We went to Powell's Books. We got the top 5 travel Portland books that people are buying. We read those, we looked at those, and we went to different information areas within the city. Powell's Books is kind of known as the informal visitor station for the city, actually, even though it's in Powell's Books. Ask them lots of questions. All of this to inform the work. And the next one, data and urban analysis. I see a lot of people all of a sudden looking up. Okay, got your attention. Yes, this is an exciting one. We balance the research with quantitative data with the qualitative research that we do too. So we can look at a larger scale of like, what are some behaviors and things that we're seeing? And then we talk really deeply one-on-one or in small groups to get the why behind some of the behaviors that we're seeing. But because I'm sure data kind of piques some of this group's interest, Ryan, why don't you speak a little bit to this data visualization that you put together?
Sure, we made several data visualizations and maps for this project as part of the analysis. This data set, shout out to City Observatory, they made it public, free to use, and it shows public facing businesses and storefronts throughout Portland. And what's great about it is when you look at this map through the lens of wayfinding, you can see that so many of the business districts have a sort of linear format to them, which those of you who know Portland know that when you walk down these streets, it's pretty clear where to go, right? The buildings are more commercial on that main street, then it becomes residential. There's kind of a straight line to follow. But look at downtown. It's much different. So this was kind of an unlock for us. There's no kind of clear route here compared to these other commercial streets in Portland.
Great. So we synthesize all of this data and we tried to capture like what are some key learnings that can help inform the way that we approach designing a pedestrian wayfinding system. So before we get into this, I want to give a little group participation. If you're online, I want you to type in your response. For those of you here, I just want you to shout out Seattle. What landmarks come to mind? Beetle, Pike, anyone typing in online? Puget Sound, okay. New York City, what comes to mind?
Times Square.
Times Square.
Yankee Stadium.
Empire State Building, okay. Portland, Oregon, what's our landmark? What comes to mind? Our city, what is it?
The stacks.
Pioneer Square.
Okay, but less enthusiastic. You're like a little bit unsure. Okay, yeah, we've heard a lot of different things, right? Like I heard a little bit Pioneer Square. There's a little more question mark that's coming up the way that you guys are answering it, which is completely normal. I think when we ask this question, locals are like, oh, it's the Portland Japanese Garden, the Chinese Garden, it's Powell's Books, it's Cova coffee or, you know, cocoa donuts, right? Like there's so many things that it's like, and I say this and yeah, you're nodding. It's like, yeah, you're all like, yeah, that's Portland. But it's like 10 things, right? It's not as simple as like when you say Seattle and you guys all had 2, and I say New York and there's like 2 things that bubble up. And you can picture those things in your mind, right? For people who are visiting and you say, oh, it's like the park blocks. Like, what the heck, right? How am I there whenever they see like a green patch? They don't know. We don't have these traditional landmarks. And traditional landmarks, when we start to say, oh, we want a pedestrian wayfinding system like New York City, like Seattle. Well, they have other wayfinding tools that's built into their city that we don't have. We don't have those iconic visuals. And I'm not proposing like we need to put some kind of iconic piece. Sure, maybe that's actually a future job, you know, Joseph, maybe you can work on that. But that actually we need to leverage the things that we do have and help people build a picture in their mind of what it is so they know when they get there. Okay, thank you for that. The downtown grid is difficult to navigate. We love the small walkable streets, but locals and tourists both said that when you're downtown, and this is a bit of the data visualization that Ryan talked about, when you're downtown, there's a lack of hierarchy. So it's sometimes hard to know which direction should I go, which street should I go to get to a specific destination. And there are so many decision points because they are small blocks. So that can create a lot of like decision-making fatigue with people. So just taking into account the fact that, oh my gosh, I could walk 20 different ways to get there. Which one is going to have a lively storefront? I want to make sure I walk the good route. There's not really a way to know that unless you're really familiar with the area. People visit for the vibe, but often don't know where to find it. Going back to like, if landmarks aren't something that you can easily recognize, you're kind of like, am I there? Am I there? Like, this seems cool. Is this the Portland thing? It's difficult to get a sense for. And then wayfinding would show that Portland prioritizes pedestrians. Right now, we play it so cool, right? Like, we're just like, oh, come and hang out. But actually, this like idea of like, we're being so friendly, actually, we're not saying anything. We're like, you're on your own, fend for yourselves. And this is something that we've already learned in the pilot. We'll get into the pilot, but I can't help but share some of the learnings, is that when we put these signs out there, again, locals and tourists have been like, oh, it's just so nice to see like that there's effort being made, that like we are trying to, just putting Portland on there with a walk symbol shows that I should be here, right? And it is this inherently welcoming tool that's in our streetscape. Okay, wayfinding is more than signs and maintenance is more than cleaning. I'm going to say it again. Wayfinding is more than signs and maintenance is more than cleaning. This mantra, this is a second mantra I'll say for our project team. Wayfinding is a system. And that if there's so much focus on like, hey, we got to get signs put up and we have to make sure that we're cleaning them because they're going to get graffiti. Yes, those things are very, very important. But guess what? We also need to make sure that the information is accurate. And these things are changing a lot. We also need to make sure it's syncing up with what's being said about our city and how the visitor center is helping guide and direct people. The overall system needs to work together. And when we're thinking about maintenance, we need to be okay with the fact that this information is going to change. We have to, when we have digital tools like Near Me Now, there can't be conflicting information. They all have to work together. And that's a lot of coordination, and we've started to do that already within the pilot. Okay, so we've taken this, we've created a set of values, these 5 values that we used to early on, again, we hadn't even started designing yet. So we use these to say, what do we need to make sure that we really embrace as we go into design? And how can we start to inspire our design team, but our entire team to think about what a future system could be? So the first one, thanks, Gena, orientation. So help people build a mental map of Portland. The more people understand Portland, the more confident they are to explore it.
And then for each of these values or themes, we illustrated and identified opportunities from other cities to show how could you actually address this value. So for example, here around this one, around building a mental map, we have some examples like of observation decks, thinking of the Prudential Tower in Boston or the Space Needle, being able to kind of build a mental map by seeing the city from above. Or similarly, a model of the city that could perhaps be built and on display at Travel Portland's Visitor Center, so that visitors could get a sense of hills on one side, river on the other, downtown between them, east side neighborhoods past the river, that sort of thing.
The second is around experience. So guide people both to and through Portland. Guidance is more than directions, it's a service. And you heard it, wayfinding is more than signs, it's a system.
And of course, there are great signage systems popping up all over. Ever since the London system from the early 2000s, a lot of cities are building these pretty robust wayfinding systems that rely on signage, of course, but more than that. The maps, the customer experience and service as well. And then we have other things here too, like physical routes through downtown, thinking about the Freedom Trail in Boston, for example.
Character is important. We know Portland cares about this a lot, and we want to keep Portland personal. So celebrate the people, places, and character that make Portland so special and have that be expressed in the system.
One thing we keep talking about with this project, even through the pilot, is what makes this Portland? What makes what we do here a little bit different than what you might see in Seattle, New York, when it comes to wayfinding. So this is an effort to kind of get at that, right? You know, it could be anything from itineraries for walking that are based on, you know, local celebrities, athletes, chefs, you know, could be creative collaborations. Maybe the signage elements are collaborations with local artists, for example, something of that nature.
Access and safety is a core value for the project too. So designing for people to feel welcome and safe. This is our town. We want to share it with everyone, whether you're a first-time visitor, have a disability, don't speak English. A wayfinding system should be built for inclusion and safety.
Examples here include things like lighting specific routes, perhaps removing automobiles from specific routes to make those pedestrian environments safer, offering signage and wayfinding information in different languages. Maybe it's through a digital tool that pairs up or syncs with signage, for example.
And then of course, maintenance. The big piece about maintenance is that you're building a trusted wayfinding service and experience. So the system has to be up to date, usable, and relevant for people to trust and use it.
And there are a lot of ways this could play out. It could be that you start with a digital first approach, or you piggyback on existing infrastructure so that you're building less and having to maintain less in terms of physical infrastructure in the built environment. On the other end of the spectrum, it could be really about focusing on building the right kind of team to maintain that infrastructure. It could be something like Bike Town, where there's actually dedicated team and staff for that project.
All right, so we did a ton of research, we did a ton of engagement, we talked to people, both decision makers at the city, at city partners, we talked to people on the street, visitors and locals alike, and we got to a point of the project as we're putting together this kind of strategic plan, kind of building this foundation, as I describe it, before we start to build the house, which is a system. And we got to a point where we were like, we need to bring all the stakeholders together and have a 2-hour in-person meeting. And we have so many long meetings that we were like, are we going to be able to get people from Prosper Portland and Downtown Clean and Safe and the city and Parks and Rec and TriMet and, you know, all the people that we need in one room to start to make these decisions? Are we going to be able to get them to really come to the Portland building for a 2-hour meeting? So we thought a little bit outside of the box. That's one of the things that Gwen spoke to. Has been so fun about this project team is it's such a small dynamic team that we're able to be really nimble. And so we thought, let's have like a museum quality gallery installation, and let's have an art opening and invite not only people who are at the kind of decision-making level, but also anyone who might be kind of a future champion for this project, kind of this coalition, as I've been describing it. And let's make something that's beautiful and that really can start to share the message of what we want Walk Portland to be. So it's not just this closed off meeting that's 2 hours in an office building at you know, a city building, but let's have it be somewhere where the public can engage with it too. So Gwen and Ryan and the teams at Travel Portland and PBOT, we designed and installed this month-long project exhibition, really exhibit, and we hosted it at the Travel Portland Visitor Center. It was going to be up for 2 weeks, and the Visitor Center staff loved it so much that they were like, let's keep it up for 4 weeks, because the Visitor Center is, if you haven't been, it's on Southwest Harvey Milk, and it's open to the public. So they get folks, visitors, all day long coming in who are able to see this exhibit, walk through it, and provide their feedback too. So we also got to test out a lot of these kind of assumptions or learnings and insights that we had developed during that kind of planning phase. And so you'll start to see things on these slides that reflect some of the learnings that we had. So such as this idea of a physical map or a topo map that people can interact with. We were able to fabricate one and kind of prototype one that we could then start to use to not only inform the design of what we might use for a map of a future system, but also what those pins might be on the map. So this is a 3D map. We've got some topo for the West Hills. The river is inset down. And then we started to fill in some of our key landmarks, like Gwen described, but we also had blank pins that people could start to put their landmarks in. So this map starts to create not only the base map for the project, but also some of those landmarks that we might want to highlight in a system. I think Ryan spoke to this idea of itineraries. We worked with the Travel Portland Visitor Center staff to make 3 custom itineraries that people who walked through this exhibit could take with them. So we had like a culinary itinerary. We had kind of a romantic day in Portland itinerary, so that we could also start to test out this idea of a physical route of how you would walk between spaces, what we might want to highlight. And then you could see, if you mind, the mental maps that Gwen had described earlier when we were set up in front of Powell's Books for the day, and asking folks to draw their mental map of Portland. We then digitized those because there was a lot of insights in those maps. Some things that we started to notice is that everyone includes the river. So everyone knows there's a river somewhere. They might not be exactly sure how to get there. There's the smiley face down below. But it really starts to show you what folks' mental map is. And I think what was striking for us is that like the one similarity was the river. But other than that, people were a little fuzzy on where things were, what to include, the scale of things. So to us, that tells us, one, we have to have the river on all of the maps as a guiding principle, but also we need to start to tell people and educate people about kind of what and where is in Portland. Slide. So a close-up of that map that we use, you'll start to see things like transit, scale of streets, some of these walking distances. So this is kind of the beginning of a map that we might use for wayfinding systems. And then all of those values and the potential ideas of different things that we could implement in Portland, we put those all up on big, large boards around this exhibit hall. So it was very interactive, and it really invited people to come in and either take a Post-it note and write their ideas or their thoughts that we could then take back and analyze. And we also encourage people to upvote things by having dot stickers so people could vote for their favorite ideas. So during this month that our exhibit was up, so what turned into from a 2-hour meeting to a month-long exhibit, we had over 2,000 people walk through and interact with the exhibit. We conducted 12 tours with city staff. 60 different locations were called out by participants as potential landmarks. We received 82 comments, about 158 sticker dots. And so all of this coalesced into what we're calling the pedestrian wayfinding system framework. So some key elements that we took out of all of this work that we've just described that we knew were really going to have to be a key part of our program is some kind of sign system, a physical signage and maps to really help orient people. We want to include digital tools, that operations piece of who owns it, maintains it, how the governance structure of it, how do we keep this thing up and running and relevant. Landmarks and paths, so those key landmarks, but also the path between those landmarks. And then incorporating the Travel Portland Visitor Center services because they just offer such an amazing resource and value to the city. And then all of that tied within those values that we had described. All right, so that's all the strategic planning work. We did that body of work in about 10 months through 2024. And then our kind of next plan was to start looking for funding, thinking about a permanent system, maybe something we could implement 2026, 2030, somewhere in there. But we had so much amazing momentum. The exhibit was so successful. People were really asking us, what's next? What comes next for this work? And frankly, we all really like working together. So we were like, how can we continue doing this great work? And so that brought us this idea of a pilot. We had so much goodwill for the project. So how can we continue this work? Let's do a pilot. We were able to secure funding from Travel Oregon. So our state tourism agency, they have a grant program. We applied using all this great work from the strategic plan that we all just described. And we applied for $150,000 of pilot funding and received that funding in July of this year. And so we were able to test out a lot of the stuff that we had explored and learned through the strategic planning process. And we're also able to learn a lot of lessons before we go through a kind of a permanent system.
I think too, we talk about this a lot, that it's so part of the process. It's like, okay, come up with a strategic plan and then get a lot of money and go all in and build the actual thing. And this idea of why do we hold it so precious, right? It's a lot of money and it has to be right when we put it in. It's like, we want to continue this idea of testing and learning. And we don't want to spend too much money, right? We can spend a smaller amount, test and learn, build a lot of trust, get a lot smarter, get a plan that can really inform a better system in the future. So I think this idea of one, yes, of course, we're continuing the momentum, the energy, but honestly, this is more of a process that we tend to like to take in all of our work, where it's test, learn, prototype, right? We prototyped with paper and cardboard. We don't have those slides, but we did that. This pilot is another kind of way of doing that.
So now we're going to jump into the pilot and we're going to start with a short video. Gena's voice, with my voice.
Walking is a perfect way to experience everything Portland has to offer. Walk Portland and the Downtown Portland Walking Route can help you explore the heart of the City of Roses. With its compact downtown blocks and abundance of attractions, Portland is the perfect city for a stroll or a roll. Walk Portland, a partnership between the Portland Bureau of Transportation, Travel Portland, and Oregon Walks, seeks to make it easier than ever for pedestrians to explore the city. Walk Portland's downtown walking route features new signs and maps to help you walk and roll around the city with confidence. Just follow the decals and signs and let them guide you to some of downtown's most iconic spots. Need help? Stop by the Travel Portland Visitor Center for tips, maps, and recommendations from locals. Walk Portland is live now through October, so grab a friend and go rediscover downtown.
So we'll talk a little bit about the pilot now. The video provides a nice kind of overview of what it consists of. We started by thinking, hey, instead of testing these wayfinding assumptions and ideas out in, say, 12 square blocks or a certain part of the city, let's test them out along a route. Since like Gwen and Gena were saying, this idea of finding a particular route through downtown is difficult for some folks. So we decided we'd kind of orient these interventions along a route that anchors some key spots, destinations in the city that we know a lot of people are going to or looking for. So Powell's Books, Pioneer Courthouse Square, and the waterfront. We designed a sign family or sign system, which you see on the far left here, consisting of an orientation sign, directional signs, sidewalk decals. We also explored some murals and placemaking or art opportunities. And then finally, some print and digital information resources as well. We'll kind of walk through the sign family now. We have these orientation signs, which are quite large. They're positioned at those key landmark destinations, as well as some other plazas along the route. And they show the entire route on the map and also point out destinations that are nearby. All of these signs were built to last just a short time for the prototype. So we fabricated these steel frames, quickly bolted them into the sidewalk, printed these things on dye bond, threw an anti-graffiti laminate over them, and called it a day. And we're able to build these things for about 4 or 5% of what a permanent sign would cost. Here's a view of one of those orientation signs at Pioneer Courthouse Square. As much as possible, we tried to use existing infrastructure as well. So here we are attaching it to one of the columns in the square. And these signs typically had directional information up top, the map below. The directional information I want to call out is always focused as much as we could do with these maps and signs. We try to make the information as relatable and human as possible. So instead of calling out distances in miles or kilometers, they're called out in the number of minutes it takes to walk. And here we are down at the other end of that downtown walking route, down at the waterfront, and you can see the map beneath. We illustrated in the map a lot of we try to look for the more kind of iconic or landmark-ish things in Portland. So in the map, the bridges are actually drawn three-dimensionally. So you can see the bridge, see where it is, and we try to make that as intuitive as possible for visitors. Also works across languages too, which is nice. And then the form of the signs is meant to stand out. So in that streetscape environment, so many signs, of course, are rectangular. So we deliberately changed the shape a bit. We also focused on creating high contrast between the map itself and that circle and the background color. So the map really pops, especially on overcast days. Sometimes they almost look kind of backlit, as if they're glowing. The map follows a lot of principles, kind of best practices for wayfinding pedestrian maps, but also tries to bring in some Portland elements too. So some of those best practices are things like heads-up mapping. So every single map is custom designed and oriented to the person who's standing there, so that instead of north being up, the map aligns with exactly what you're seeing around the sign. We have, instead of using, we're also testing some new things here because it's a pilot, right? So instead of, most of these kinds of maps will draw a 5-minute walk circle and a 10-minute walk circle. Tricky thing with those, as many of you know in urban planning, those aren't necessarily accurate, right? Because when you actually walk the route down the streets, it can take quite a bit longer to reach, it could go 45-degree angle on one of those walk shed circles. So we're experimenting a little bit with instead calling out specific walk times to key destinations as a way to communicate a sense of scale and how long it takes to walk places. We also pulled in some really custom illustrations for some of the key destinations to help make those pop. And we tried to make these illustrations have kind of a Portland vibe to them. I should say, in general, the aesthetic of these maps builds on Travel Portland's brand, which is designed to be of Portland. So it has a lot of kind of bespoke qualities to it. And these illustrations we created are based on their illustration brief and their brand guidelines. And then we have these directional signs, testing some blade signs up high, as well as smaller directional signs down below. And those signs have a sort of zoomed in map. It doesn't show the whole route, but what's cool about it is it shows more detail about what's immediately around you. And it does show the route, and it points out how long it takes to walk to the other end and what the destination is on the other end. But what's great about these is we can start to call out more specific things. James Beard Public Market, coming soon. Other destinations, like the Schnitz or the Newmark Theater. So these maps kind of give a little more information, and these directional signs help ensure that you're on the right route. We place these every 2 or 3 blocks. It's important to have enough density of them so that they're accessible and useful to people. We're also testing some Braille up top here, you can see as well. And then we're also looking at, we put out these sidewalk decals as a way to kind of really reinforce the route on the ground plane.
And like I said before, it's more than just signs. So we were looking at having elements for placemaking. At first, we're like, oh, we just need something big, but artistic. Does someone want to take a picture in front of it? And we because it's a short pilot, we didn't have time or resources to engage an artist at this point. I think a fuller system, of course, we want that to be populated with the amazing artwork of our city. Interesting learning though. So we're like, okay, we'll make a graphic for this space and we're gonna actually give people some information. So it turned into like this larger mural / billboard / wayfinding sign in a way, where people are taking pictures with it, but they're also going up and they're being like, oh, Pioneer Square is this way. Right, like when they get off the max, that it's turning into like a useful tool. That's another way to grab people's attention and build awareness. It's very much like marketing. Like you have to see something 3 times before you realize you actually saw something, right? Like an ad. This is like a nice way to have a larger scale for people to be like, oh, I saw that character. That person walking the cat before. Yep. Okay. That's the same system. Okay. I'm walk up to that sign and feel confident that it's the same system. So that's been really helpful. The other piece going beyond signs is that Gena mentioned working really closely with the visitor center. Great chance. We did a big piece on the storefront here to again clue people in that this is the same system, and if you have questions or need help, you can come in here. Again, I think they're saying, please don't take this down. We love it. But another key piece is that we wanted to work with the people working inside the visitor center because they're talking one-on-one with people. They're getting really amazing insights and learning. And we wanted to be able to go deeper with the map and the detail and how that's helping or not helping people learn some of the challenges and the opportunities to make this even better. So we did design a printed map, and that's being used at the visitor center. And again, every day they're seeing huge numbers of people coming in, and part of their routine is they always have a map on the table. They're giving people maps and they're talking through it with people and getting an understanding of how it's resonating.
So a key way that we're getting and kind of gathering feedback and understanding and kind of showing support for this system is through an online survey. So every single map that Ryan described has a unique QR code on it. So we're able to track how many people are scanning a QR code at each particular location, and then all the data that comes through that QR code, like where the phone is registered, what time of day, what day of the week it's being scanned, if it's being scanned at all. Like the Yamhill Plaza location that Ryan showed right now is our most frequently scanned sign, probably because folks are kind of waiting for the max and have some time to burn, whereas other locations are only seeing a handful of scans. And so those are also data points that we'll be able to use in our permanent system. And so we would also love to have all of you take our survey. If you could take out your phone for a second. And scan the QR code. You can also go to walkpdx.com, which is our project website that includes a link to this survey. It's going to be very helpful for us to show kind of the support and the excitement and continue to build. You guys are all now part of our coalition that I was describing earlier, and continuing to build support for this program. So as I think Ryan mentioned, this pilot is up through the end of this month. So it's been up since the 1st of August. It'll be up through the end of October, and then it's going away. And we want people to be very sad and heartbroken when the system goes away, because it was so wonderful and helpful. And we're going to use the time this winter to really evaluate and write up our findings and some key next steps, and start to think about how we can fund a future system and what a future permanent system will look like. Next slide. So we just want to say thank you so much for inviting us, for reaching out. I used to come to these seminars when I was a grad student at PSU, so it feels very full circle. So thank you for the invite and for having us. And my email address, gena.gastaldi@portlandoregon.gov. If anyone has any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out directly. And then Gwen and Ryan's email as well. And with that, we can open it up for questions.
Yeah.
Gwen and Ryan, for this review, the webinar, please feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A features online in the control panel of your Zoom window. For those of you in the room, you can raise your hands. probably start with you.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you did any kind of data collection on how people are getting downtown. You know, they're driving to the park on the street to, you know, so that they, I guess, kind of get activated into the system somehow. And, you know, if they park way away from the visitor center, how do they even know the visitor center's there?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, there's a lot of data being collected, I think, by PBOT around how people get downtown. And also by Travel Portland at the visitor center. They record data for every visitor who comes in. In terms of our survey as part of this project, which you'll see if you complete it, we deliberately kept the data collection quite limited so that we don't overwhelm users with too many questions. So that particular question didn't make it into that sort of final cut.
Right, but I think in terms of like us knowing like how are people arriving downtown, so we can address that. I think the main things that we were looking at, one, if you're driving, trying to find a parking spot, right? Like going in, especially we were looking at the conditions of parking garages and how people are like, where am I? What exit did I come out of? Right? Like, just trying to identify, I think it was a pretty high level of like, where are people needing to get oriented? Right. And so one is we found parking garages. And so we've like leveraged that as a location that we're using in this pilot. The other one is when you get off transit. So getting off a MAX, getting off a bus is a lot of times it's like, oh, this is my stop. Where am I? Right. Like that moment where people, and literally people do that. They look around. Right. And so we use those as kind of like, okay, we know those are key places to address without having to maybe look at a huge data set to understand that.
Yeah, the locations where we did the two big murals, so we showed one, we have another one. Both of those are on opposite corners of a smart park garage. So exactly to the point that Gwen is describing, where you come out of a smart park garage and you're kind of disoriented, like, where am I? So that's where we did the big wraps on the building. They're also PBOT owned, so it was kind of an efficient way to get something up quickly. And then also the streetcar, we ended up adding even more of the smaller directional signs than we were initially anticipating, because as we walked the system dozens of times, we realized that streetcar stops were such a great moment to kind of help orient people and get them familiar with the wayfinding system. So we ended up adding additional signs based on that insight.
And then the other thing that I'm not sure if Ryan mentioned, but we're always on these signs, we're directing you to the visitor center or to the key landmarks that we kind of said we're going to prioritize. So that you can, wherever you've landed, you're kind of like, oh, okay, it's this way to the visitor center. It's this way to Pioneer Square. It's only 15 minutes to the waterfront. Like that's been a big aha moment for a lot of people. So just to continue to like reinforce time, distance, and then orientation.
I just want to interject. I believe your response already have those pretty covered very well. There is indeed a data set that's coming out of Oregon Travel Survey that Metro and PBOT did. Basically, of course, only limited to Oregon households. I believe they will theoretically they will report how they get to or how basically every member in the household that covered in a survey, they will record where to go and how to get to there, and then what are the trips they take. If you don't mind, maybe digging up. I believe it's coming out in probably this or next month. So it will be publicly lookable.
We did also use Downtown Clean and Safe does pedestrian counts, and so we used that data set as well. So for example, they just released their summer 2025 data, and they found that the intersection of 10th and Burnside downtown is the busiest pedestrian intersection in the city. I think it was 1.4, 1.6 million people walk through that intersection, which is also the intersection in front of Powell's Books, and where we put one of our large orientation signs in what we call the Pod Plaza. So where PBOT closed that sublane and created a plaza in front of Shake Shack. So we're able to leverage that space. So using some of the existing data that's out there to understand, okay, either to identify locations where we wanted to install signage or to confirm some of our assumptions of where we wanted to install something.
You mentioned it briefly, but about the earlier wayfinding systems that didn't work out in downtown. I was curious what you all learned about that led to how you made this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, one of the most important elements and a nut that we're still trying to crack is that governance structure. So who owns this? You know, who's the ownership body, who permits it, who maintains it, who cleans it, who puts up a new piece if one of them gets taken out by, you know, a vehicle or something like that. And so I think that was what the previous system didn't have. I mean, it was a great system when it was installed, but like anything, it needs to be continuously updated and maintained and cleaned and have a long-term funding structure for that. And so for us, that was part of the reason to not just jump headfirst into trying to get a permanent system on the ground before we have that really strong foundational element. So not only who's going to own it and maintain it, but how are we paying for those pieces? So that's going to be a big next step for us.
And concurrent with the pilot, we've established an advisory committee that has representatives from those kinds of parties that are likely to be involved in that kind of thing, from PBOT Travel Portland, of course, but also TriMet and a number of other agencies. So we're trying to like build that governance model and structure now, like as we work through the pilot.
I think there was a question in that.
That was my question.
Oh, great minds.
What sort of measures for like accessibility have you taken or are you guys planning to take in the future with just like having like braille on signs or like sign placement itself?
Yeah.
Of like making sure you're not blocking sidewalks and stuff?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so for the pilot, one thing that was really important was that the entire route, so that designated route that we described, that was all entirely accessible. So we made sure that every corner had a ramp and was accessible for anyone using any kind of mobility device. We actually ended up changing one segment of our route at the last minute, realizing that it was one of the corners was missing that. So just like a very simple piece of making sure that the whole route was physically accessible. Using elements like Braille, also designing the map so that they can be read by a screen reader. So a lot of blind low vision folks have an app on their phone that they can use a screen reader to kind of guide over the map and it'll audibly read it to them. So making sure our maps were all compatible with that system. And then in terms of sign placement to make sure nothing was blocked, yes, critically important. So we most of the signs were also placed on existing infrastructure, so like an existing sign pole or some other pole. Also, that was for time efficiency because those are poles that PBOT owns, and so it was a easier, quicker system. And we found out about the grant around July 1 and we installed the entire system August 1. So it was crazy lightning speed in terms of government timelines. Usually do not go that fast, but we, you know, that was just when the grant money became available and we didn't want to miss out on that peak summer visitor season. So we set a very tight timeline of having everything up by the 1st of August so that it could be up, you know, during our nicer months. So putting signs on existing poles that were already out of the pedestrian through zone.
You're leading walks too. I think that's.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna mention.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gena's doing this great job leading many walks through the course of the pilot. I almost feel like the walks are just as important and just as big as the signs themselves we put up. And we're learning so much from them. And several of those walks are with folks who have low mobility or low vision challenges. So we're trying to learn from as many people as we can through those guided walks of the system as well.
The video mentioned it, but I'll mention it too. We've also partnered with Oregon Walks on this project. And so they're doing a lot. They're a local statewide pedestrian advocacy group and we have some representation in the rooms. Thanks, Claire. But Oregon Walks has done a great job. They're helping to organize and set up and lead walks with us. So we've been doing walks with high school students at Lincoln High School with their urban geography class, which has been really interesting to get that kind of youth perspective and a lot of new residents to Portland in those classes. We've also been leading walks with AARP, TriMet, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which is a committee that I am the liaison for with the city, YPT and the MERT program and just other groups like that. So, and Oregon Walks in September program, we also led a walk. So if the system's up for another month. And so if you have any other organizations that you think would enjoy going on a walk, just let us know. Give me an email.
Is the success of the pilot solely determined on the people who choose to scan the QR codes and leave feedback? Or are there any other factors that you guys look at? And realistically, how many good surveys, good feedback surveys would you guys call a successful pilot?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the. Like, is that just me? Big measure of success for us was getting a pilot up and off the ground, successfully winning a grant, a very competitive statewide grant. So, Travel Oregon saw our proposal and said, yes, this system will help to elevate the visitor experience in Portland. So we were honored to receive that funding and that recognition through Travel Oregon. So to me, that was a big, winning the grant was one measure of success. Getting a pilot up and running in a month was a measure of success. And I think just the positive feedback and the positive kind of messaging around the system and the feedback we've been getting from media and from people taking the survey.
Yeah, the survey is just one input.
Yeah.
We aren't gonna base everything off the few people who are motivated enough and able to actually complete it. Although that's one great measure. Like we mentioned, we're getting input from the visitor center, people who are talking to them in person. We're going out, we're just observing people because we know a lot of people aren't gonna scan a QR code, but that doesn't mean they're not using it. And it's actually, I think, really interesting to see how they are or aren't using the signs that are there, or I don't notice it, or when a child is actually like, come here, look at this, it's here, right? Like we're seeing some interesting patterns.
People taking selfies.
Or selfies, that's the weirdest one that we're seeing. Like, why are you taking a selfie with the sign? And we're like, oh, because Portland doesn't have a whole lot of things to take pictures with. And this actually looks pretty nice. And it says Portland and you're like, hey, I'm here. But again, no one's writing that in a survey. So we have to make sure we're going and looking at other means and we're kind of taking all of that collectively into account. The other piece, like we said, when we did the research and we're talking to local business owners and we're talking with different organizations to inform this work, we're going back out to them and we're talking to them about this as well. So we need to continue to go back and keep those conversations going because they have a very different point of view. They are measuring success in a different way, right? Like, have you seen foot traffic increase around your store? Has anyone asked you questions about this? Are people, finding this, talking about a route or not? So yeah, I think, we don't have it down to a science, but we know that we can't just be looking at one source for sure.
When you had that digital map up and you had the linear streets outside, like when you're on Alberta or Mississippi, you sort of know that when you get there, you just kind of walk because you just follow the pattern. Downtown is kind of like a blur, except for maybe the Pearl District or Old Town Chinatown. But even if you go there, you're like, am I there or not? Yep. So I was wondering if there was just any kind of talk about sort of demarcating those zones with other branding or what people thought. What do they call downtown, or what do they think is the Pearl District? Was there input about that?
Yeah, definitely. Lots of impact. A lot of feedback on that. And looking at the mental maps that people drew is one of the most interesting ways to think about it. Talking with folks. It's enormously complicated because there's so many sub-neighborhoods throughout downtown. And of course, depending on who you talk to, it's very important to include certain neighborhoods on the map or not, right? Certain business owners say, hey, you've got to have the West End on there, right?
Locals are like, what's that? No one knows what that is.
What we found to decide to test for the sake of the pilot was simply noting downtown, Old Town Chinatown, and Pearl District. Just those three. Found a lot of the folks are looking for those destinations. In terms of demarcating boundaries, that of course is so tricky because they vary a little bit in different people's mental models and depending on what jurisdiction you're looking, who's saying where the boundaries are. So for the most part, the maps handle that simply by being a little vague there, right? Like the label kind of refers to a general area as downtown, Pearl District, and Chinatown. It's something we'll keep investigating. And I love the idea of something being a little bit different in different neighborhoods. Seattle's new system has kind of a fun aspect to it in that the industrial design of the signs have patterns on the edges that represent different neighborhoods and neighborhood influences.
It seems like the parking kitty signs could be an option for sort of adding, like flavors of areas.
Yeah. Becca, any online questions?
Oh, you're not.
Yeah,
I cannot see them, so I tried. I've had a lucky.
You gotta try to.
Not showing up on my end.
We are at noon also.
Okay, okay.
Do you wanna come up here and take one? I have them up.
I think we theoretically we end at 5 minutes past. But yeah.
good question.
Yeah, we will share those. Take this one here, what effort made to accommodate those who do not speak English as their first language? Now, how do you balance the need to communicate effectively multi-language mediums while creating signage that's quick to understand?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Great question.
great question, something we talked a lot about and that we're continually working on and iterating on. For the pilot, we really focused on pictorial elements, those illustrations showing those destinations, pictograms that represent different services. Those are things that work across languages. And we also, right, exactly. So there are a lot of elements in the map that don't require using language. Or rather, they're using a visual language, right, instead of a written language. The other thing we're kind of looking at a little bit is whether another idea we have is that digital tools could offer translations of some of the information. Of course, a lot of people are these days scanning signs with their phone and using Google Translate or other services to translate in real time what these things say. But it is possible that the QR code could lead to a version of the map, for example, that might be in different languages. That's another thing we've been working on as well.
Yeah, I definitely want to explore more incorporating other languages into a permanent system or even whatever the next iteration of this pilot is. I think even just beyond the technical ability to read it, but showing that kind of welcoming experience for people and that, that we're welcoming people who maybe don't read English or don't read English as well. So, and even just, I have a little kiddo and she saw this sign and immediately pointed to the toilet icon. She can't read, but she said, I didn't know there were so many bathrooms in Portland. So, even just, to me, that was a measure of success of like how easy and quickly even a little kid could understand what some of the graphics were saying.
Okay, great. Thank you all for attending today's Friday Transportation Seminar. Those who join remotely after the seminar ends, you will have the opportunity to complete a brief survey about today's event. It won't take a few minutes and appreciate your feedback. With that, thank you, Gena, Gwen, and Ryan, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.